I don't think I did anything wrong. I just wanted to feel wanted again. And maybe I went too far. I cheated on him with 3 men at once, and my friend told him everything. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. I'm Nerissa Vale, and I don't think I did anything wrong. I just wanted to feel wanted again. Everyone keeps saying what I did was unforgivable, but none of them were here, living with the silence I woke up to every morning. Elliot stopped touching me months before it happened. He stopped asking how I felt, stopped noticing if I changed my hair or wore something new. I told myself it was normal, that marriage goes through phases, but deep down, I started wondering if I still mattered. Then came the messages, the compliments, the attention that made me feel alive again. Maybe I went too far. Maybe it wasn't smart to mix comfort with thrill, but I swear it never felt cruel. It felt like reclaiming something I'd lost. My mistake wasn't what I did. It was trusting the wrong person with the truth. Clara, my best friend, said she couldn't keep my secret. She said honesty was love. Now Elliot knows everything, and the silence isn't heavy anymore. It's final. People say I ruined my life. I say I just wanted proof that someone still saw me. And now everyone does, but for all the wrong reasons. The morning after Clara's birthday dinner, the house smelled like cold coffee and lemon cleaner. Elliot had left early again. His side of the bed looked untouched, like he hadn't even tried to sleep. I stood there staring at the flat pillow and thought about how long it had been since we'd shared the same rhythm, same laughter, same warmth. People say marriage changes, that comfort replaces passion. But what they never mention is the slow humiliation of being unseen. When I walked into the kitchen, sunlight hit the stack of mail on the counter. Bills, flyers, and one envelope with his tidy handwriting. Utilities, paid. He always labeled everything now, as if life was a filing cabinet. I wanted to laugh at it, but it only made me feel small. I poured myself coffee and scrolled through messages on my phone. Tristan had sent a photo from last night, just our hands clinking glasses. You looked incredible, by the way. Then Jonah's text followed right after, still thinking about that laugh, and Marco, always late, wrote, "You're trouble." I smiled. For a moment, that smile felt like oxygen. It wasn't about them. Not really. It was about feeling seen, even through a screen. At work, the office lights hummed above us, too bright for a Monday. I sat in my little cubicle near the window, pretending to focus on the spreadsheet that wouldn't balance. My manager asked if I'd finished the vendor reports, and I told her I was just about to send them. I wasn't. I was rereading Tristan's text for the 5th time, wondering how a compliment could sound so safe and dangerous at once. Elliot used to talk to me like that, before everything became lists and reminders. He'd once left sticky notes in my lunch bag, each one with a line from a poem. I'd laughed and told him he was corny. Maybe I hurt him more than I knew back then. Maybe that's when he stopped trying. Around noon, I went to the break room, and Clara was there pouring herself tea. She smiled, but her eyes were tired, like she'd been carrying something heavy. "You disappeared early last night," she said. "I had a headache," I lied. She looked at me for a second too long. "You were with them again, weren't you?" I shrugged. "We just talked. You make it sound like a scandal." "It will be if Elliot finds out," she said. I laughed too loud. "He won't. He's too busy organizing his life to notice mine." Clara didn't smile. She opened her phone, hesitated, then slid it into her bag. "I saw something, Neri. A message pop up while we were taking pictures. From Marco." I turned to the window, pretending to check my reflection. You shouldn't read other people's notifications. I didn't mean to, but it said last night was perfect. I felt heat crawl up my neck. "You're making it sound dirty. It was dinner, wine, conversation." She lowered her voice. "You're married. That's not conversation. That's gambling. I told her to stop moralizing. She said she wasn't judging, just scared for me. That word, scared, made me roll my eyes. What was there to be afraid of? I was careful. I kept everything compartmentalized. My life was neat in its own messy way, each man filling a different silence Elliot had left. After work, I drove home with the radio off. The quiet pressed against my thoughts. The house greeted me the same way it always did, dim, organized, air smelling faintly of soap and coffee. Elliot's shoes were lined neatly by the door, his jacket hanging on the peg, labeled outerwear. Yes, he had labeled the hooks. I used to mock him for it. Now it just made my chest ache. Dinner was silent. He ate slowly, reading something on his phone between bites. I asked about his day. He said it was productive. I asked about a project. He said it was ongoing. Every answer was short, efficient, stripped of life. I told him he'd been distant. He said he was focused. "You don't look at me anymore," I said. "I see you," he replied, not looking up. "No, you don't." He paused, then set his fork down. "You want to be seen or admired?" I didn't answer. He went back to eating. Later, when he showered, I checked his phone on the counter. It was locked, of course. I used to know his passcode. He changed it last month. A small part of me wanted to feel offended, but mostly it felt like balance. Finally, something of his I couldn't reach. That night I lay awake scrolling through photos. Tristan's tattooed hand resting near mine on a table. Jonah's blurry selfie at the cafe we always met at. Marco's voice note saying he missed the sound of my laugh. They were all just pieces of something I thought I deserved. Proof that I wasn't invisible. When Elliot came out of the shower, he moved quietly, folding his towel, placing it on the rack. "You left the porch light on again," he said. "I forgot," I mumbled. He didn't answer, but his reflection in the mirror looked tired, like a man rehearsing patience. The next morning, I found a calendar reminder on his laptop when I went to plug in my charger. Downtown, 10:15 a.m. I assumed it was work-related, though the title was oddly vague. I stared at it longer than I should have. When I closed the screen, a faint scent of toner lingered in the room. And a printer in the corner, word to life, spitting out a blank page. It startled me. Elliot didn't even look up from his coffee. "You printing something?" I asked. He shook his head. "Just clearing the queue." It felt like a strange thing to say. At work, I told Clara about the new alert. She frowned. "Maybe he's talking to someone." I almost laughed. "You think Elliot's having an affair? He barely looks at anyone, let alone flirts." "Still," she said quietly, "men like him, when they finally break, they don't shout. They act." I brushed her off, but the thought lingered all day. When I got home, Elliot was already there, organizing the bills into labeled folders. His hands moved with calm precision. I stood behind him, half irritated, half curious. "Why do you keep all that?" I asked. "For reference," he said. "Reference for what?" "For later." That answer stayed in my mind like a thorn. That night, when he went to bed early, I opened my laptop and reread my messages again. The thrill wasn't as sharp. Tristan had started being less sweet, more transactional. Jonah was asking when I'd decide. Marco was pushing for another weekend. For the first time, I felt tired of the chaos I'd created, but pride wouldn't let me admit it. I texted Clara. "You ever feel like everyone's watching, but no one sees you?" She didn't reply until morning. "That's because you make noise instead of meaning." It annoyed me, but part of me knew she was right. I stared at Elliot across the breakfast table. He was scrolling through something quietly. His hair was still damp from the shower, his shirt ironed perfectly. The picture of composure. I wanted to shake him, to make him show something, anger, jealousy, anything. "Do you ever think we're broken?" I asked. He looked up, calm as always. "No, just out of sync." "And whose fault is that?" He folded his napkin neatly. "Does it matter?" It infuriated me, the way he refused to rise to the bait. I told him he was impossible to talk to. He said, "Then maybe we should stop talking." That silence was worse than shouting. I grabbed my bag and left for work, slamming the door louder than necessary. But he didn't chase after me. At the office, Tristan sent another message. "Miss you already?" I almost replied, but didn't. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. Then I saw Clara walking toward my desk, her expression uneasy. She handed me a coffee and whispered, "You need to stop before he finds out." I said I was in control. She shook her head. No one ever is when they start lying. When I came home that night, the guest room door was slightly open. Inside, Elliot's desk lamp glowed over a neat stack of papers and a USB drive labeled by date. My name wasn't on anything, but I felt like it was written between the lines. I stepped back quietly, heart thudding. He came out of the bathroom just then, towel around his neck. "Looking for something?" I forced a smile. "No, just wondering why you're working so late." "Preparation," he said. "For what?" "For peace." He turned off the light and walked past me without another word. Later, lying in bed, I thought about what peace might mean to him. For me, peace was distraction, messages, compliments, noise. For him, it was order, silence, a kind of calm that scared me more than anger ever could. When I finally closed my eyes, I dreamt of a printer humming, pages spilling out faster than I could catch them, each one blank except for a single word at the top, evidence. The next few days passed in that strange half-peace that comes before something breaks. Elliot was polite, measured, moving through the house like a guest who didn't plan to stay long. He still made coffee in the morning, still left his cup beside mine, but the small rituals felt like choreography without emotion. Every sound, the soft closing of drawers, the creak of his office chair, carried meaning I couldn't read. At work, I found myself checking my phone more than I should have. Tristan sent me a photo from a rooftop bar with a caption that said, "You'd love this view." I told him I couldn't go out during the week, but 10 minutes later I texted, "Maybe just one drink." I don't know what I was expecting. Adventure, maybe? Validation. Something to prove that I could still command attention. Clara stopped by my cubicle around 4, holding a folder. "I need to talk to you after the meeting," she said quietly. Her tone made me nervous, but I pretended not to notice. When 5 o'clock came, I found her waiting near the elevator. "Neri, please don't go out with him," she said. "Who?" I asked, even though I knew. "Tristan, I saw your messages when you were showing me that photo. You think you're playing it safe, but people talk. The office isn't blind." I laughed, though it came out harsh. "You're acting like I'm running a scandal. We're just friends having drinks." "3 friends," she said softly. "Tristan, Jonah, Marco. How many stories can you juggle before one of them collides?" I wanted to tell her she didn't understand, but the elevator doors opened, and I stepped inside. Her face looked tired as the doors closed. The rooftop bar buzzed with noise and neon. Tristan was already there, leaning against the railing with that careless grin that made him look younger than he was. He offered me a drink before I even sat down. "Rough day?" he asked. "Just ordinary," I said. "Well, let's make it less ordinary." He lifted his glass in a mock toast. We laughed. We leaned closer, and for a while, the city lights blurred into something soft and unreal. I told myself it was harmless, that Elliot and I were on a break we never agreed to. Somewhere between the second and third drink, Tristan brushed a strand of hair from my face, and I didn't stop him. Jonah arrived later, uninvited but not unwelcome. He worked in another department and liked to pretend he was worldly. He called me the mysterious one, and ordered shots we didn't need. Marco joined after midnight, straight from the gym, smelling like cologne and sweat. The 4 of us were loud, the kind of loud that draws eyes. Phones came out. Someone tagged me in a story. Just laughter and blurred lights. But I knew the angle caught Tristan's hand on my arm. I should have cared. Instead, I felt powerful. The next morning, my head throbbed. Elliot had already left, but his mug sat spotless on the counter. I opened my phone and saw Clara's message. "You're trending, in the worst way." My stomach dropped. The video from the night before had been reposted on someone's story. Me laughing, leaning close to Tristan, with Jonah and Marco shouting my name like it was a game. The comments were full of heart emojis and teasing, but I knew what people saw. At work, whispers followed me down the hall. Tristan winked when we passed, but Jonah barely looked at me. I checked my messages during lunch. Marco had sent, "You okay? Don't let it get to you." The words looked kind, but the guilt beneath them burned. Clara appeared at my desk again, this time without pretending to need a file. "He's going to see it, Neri," she said. "Elliot doesn't use social media," I said. "You think that means he won't hear about it?" "People talk. Someone will send it to him." "Then let them," I snapped. "Maybe he'll finally care about something." She looked at me for a long time before saying, "You keep mistaking attention for care." Then she walked away. That evening, when I came home, Elliot was in the living room with his laptop open. He didn't look angry, just deliberate. There was a folder on the table, labeled neatly in his handwriting. I stood behind him and asked, "Working late again?" "Always," he said without turning. I tried to sound casual. "You've been quiet lately." "I've had things to organize." "What kind of things?" "Things that make sense when people don't." It stung more than I wanted it to. I told him I was tired of the passive-aggressive remarks. He said, "Then maybe stop giving me reasons to make them." I froze. "What's that supposed to mean?" I asked. He closed the laptop. "It means people have eyes, Nerissa." For a second, I couldn't breathe. "So you saw the video?" I whispered. "I saw enough," he said. "It was nothing. A work event. We were celebrating." "Celebrating what, exactly?" "That I still exist." He stood up slowly, his expression unreadable. "If you needed proof of that, you could have looked in a mirror instead of a crowd." Then he walked past me, calm and precise, like a man walking away from a burning building without looking back. I wanted to chase him, but pride held me still. Instead, I texted Clara. "He knows." She wrote back one word, "Good." I deleted it immediately. The next day, Elliot didn't come home after work. I tried calling him, but it went to voicemail. Around 9, I checked our shared calendar on my phone. A new event had appeared. Downtown, 3 p.m. No details, just that. I told myself it was a work meeting, but the lie didn't even convince me. Clara called that night. "You have to stop pretending this can be fixed with words," she said. "I didn't even do anything that bad." "You cheated, Nerissa." "It wasn't..." I stopped. "It wasn't real, it was attention, it was survival." "You're rewriting it to sound noble," she said gently. "But you hurt him in public. You humiliated someone who loved you." Her calm voice made me furious. "Don't act like you've never made mistakes." "I've made plenty," she said, "but I didn't film them." Then she hung up. That night, the house felt like a museum. Every object belonged to a past version of us. The wedding photo on the shelf looked wrong, like we were actors in someone else's story. I took it down and placed it face down on the table. The frame left a faint mark on the wood, a pale rectangle of what used to be. The next morning, Elliot was back. He was dressed neatly, as if nothing had happened. I asked where he'd been. "Working," he said. "All night?" He nodded. I had things to finish. I wanted to scream, to make him react, but his calmness was infuriating. He made breakfast for Ella, kissed her forehead, and left again without a word to me. When she was gone to school, I opened the drawer in his office. It was locked. I found the spare key taped under the desk, exactly where he used to hide it. Inside were folders, utilities, household, bank, and at the bottom, one labeled personal. My hand trembled as I opened it. Inside were printed screenshots, photos, captions, comments from the rooftop night, my name highlighted in yellow. I heard the front door open behind me and froze. Elliot's voice was steady. "Looking for something?" I turned. "Why are you keeping these?" He walked closer. "Because I don't argue without evidence anymore." I wanted to defend myself, but words failed. He closed the folder and slid it back into the drawer, locking it with a soft click. "You should get ready," he said. "Your office might call." "What do you mean?" "Clara sent them the same video. She thought you'd want honesty." I felt my stomach twist. She wouldn't. She did. He picked up his jacket. Not everyone believes silence helps. He left before I could respond. At work, the tension was unbearable. My manager called me into her office, voice flat but polite. She said the company couldn't have distractions affecting professionalism. I said it was personal business. She said, "Not when it's public." I walked out before she could finish. Outside, I sat in my car staring at my reflection in the window. I looked composed, even pretty, but behind the makeup was something raw. Fear, maybe, or guilt. I messaged Clara. "Why did you tell them?" Her reply came fast. "Because you weren't going to tell him the truth. Someone had to." When I got home that evening, Elliot was sitting at the kitchen table again. A document lay open in front of him, and a faint smell of ink filled the air. I asked if this was revenge. He looked up and said, "No, it's order." I didn't ask what that meant. I just went upstairs, sat on the edge of the bed, and realized for the first time that I might actually lose everything. Not because of what I did, but because of how calmly he was letting it happen. The next week began with silence, the kind that hums under your skin until you start to hear your own heartbeat too loudly. Elliot wasn't avoiding me. He was just absent in plain sight. He moved around the house like a quiet routine, checking bills, adjusting clocks, making breakfast for Ella without a single wasted motion. I started speaking more, filling the air just so the emptiness wouldn't swallow me. He answered with polite nods or small hums, but his eyes never lingered. On Tuesday, I found a new notebook on his desk labeled Archive A. It was too neat, too deliberate. I didn't open it. Just seeing it was enough to make my stomach twist. That night, I lay awake wondering what was inside. Lists, screenshots, his version of events. At work, people had stopped pretending they weren't talking about me. I'd catch snippets near the copier. My name, whispered, followed by forced silence when I walked by. Tristan tried to act casual, but even he seemed nervous. Jonah had gone cold, barely saying hello. Marco messaged to say he thought it was unfair how everyone was ganging up. But the guilt in his words made me nauseous. It was like watching rats scatter from a sinking ship I hadn't realized I was steering. During lunch, Clara sat across from me in the cafeteria. She didn't speak at first, just stirred her coffee. Finally, she said, "He's not going to yell. You need to understand that." I sighed. "You think silence is punishment?" "It's not punishment," she said quietly. "It's distance. You burned the bridge, and he's watching it collapse." "You make it sound poetic," I muttered. "You always twist things into stories so you don't have to feel them." I looked away, pretending to check my phone. The rooftop video had been deleted by the original poster, but screenshots lived on in other corners of the internet. My name was in a comment thread, the married one. I turned the phone face down. "I made one mistake," I said. "People act like I committed a crime." Clara's voice softened. "You didn't make one mistake, Nerissa. You made a pattern." I stood up, forcing a laugh. "You should write greeting cards with all this wisdom." When I got home that night, the air smelled faintly of toner again. Elliot was in the dining room, the soft glow of his laptop reflecting off his glasses. "You're home late," he said, not looking up. "Traffic," I lied. He nodded once, typing something. "Are you ever going to talk to me?" I asked. "I'm talking now." "Not like that. About us." He closed the laptop slowly. "What's left to say?" "I don't know. Maybe that you forgive me." His expression didn't change. Forgiveness isn't a word. It's a document you earn. The phrasing unsettled me. You make it sound legal. He looked at me for the first time in days. Maybe it should be. I wanted to argue, to say love wasn't paperwork, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I watched him stand, gather the papers, and place them neatly into a folder labeled household. The drawer clicked shut with a precision that felt like a verdict. Later, when he was upstairs helping Ella with her homework, I crept back to the table. A single sheet had been left behind, half under a coaster. It wasn't a form or a bill, just a short note in his handwriting. Follow-up scheduled. Confirm evidence. My hands went cold. I didn't know if it was meant for work or something else, but the word evidence hit like a blade. I shoved the paper back where I found it before he came down. That night, Clara called again. "He's building a case," she said. "You're paranoid." "No, I'm realistic. You humiliated him in front of everyone. He's not the type to let that fade." "He's not vindictive," I said. "He doesn't need to be. He's smart." Her words stayed with me long after the call ended. By Thursday, Elliot's calmness had started to feel cruel. He still smiled at Ella, helped her with her backpack, asked about her art projects, but to me, he was all surface. I tried to start a conversation while he ironed his shirt that morning. "You used to tell me everything," I said. He nodded. "And you used to tell me the truth." I wanted to scream at him for that, but instead I folded my arms and said, "Maybe if you'd given me attention, I wouldn't have needed anyone else's." He didn't even pause. "You don't need attention, Nerissa. You need reflection." He left before I could respond. That afternoon, my supervisor called me into HR. They said they were restructuring the department, but offered no details. The polite phrasing made it clear I was being pushed out quietly. My reputation was a liability now. I nodded, pretending to understand, and walked out with my box of desk items. Outside, I called Clara. "They let me go," I said. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Sorry doesn't help me pay bills." "You could still fix things with Elliot." "You mean grovel?" "I mean tell him the truth before it's printed somewhere." When I got home, Elliot was in the living room again, sorting mail. I threw my bag down. "I lost my job," I said. He looked up briefly. "I know." "How could you possibly know?" "They called for a reference last week." I blinked. "And what did you tell them?" "The truth." I stared at him, horrified. "You sabotaged me." He shook his head. "I didn't lie." "Same thing." He sighed softly, as if I were a difficult student. "Consequences aren't sabotage, Nerissa. They're gravity." I wanted to slap the calm out of him, but instead I turned and went upstairs. That night, I packed a small bag, not because I planned to leave, but because I wanted him to ask why. He didn't. He kissed Ella goodnight, walked past me in the hallway, and closed the guest room door behind him. The next morning, I found another calendar alert on his phone when he left it charging. Meeting, personal. 11:40 a.m. No other details. When I clicked the alert, it opened to a note. Documents ready. Confirm with Clara. I froze. Clara's name. When she answered my call, her voice was quiet. "He came to see me," she said before I could ask. "When?" 2 days ago. He wanted clarity." "You told him more?" "I told him everything. He deserved the truth." My throat tightened. "You had no right." "I had every right," she said softly. "You used me as your cover. You made me lie for you. I was drowning in your mess." I couldn't speak. She exhaled shakily. "He wasn't angry, Nerissa. He was calm. That's what scared me." I hung up. When Elliot came home that evening, I waited for him in the kitchen. "You went to Clara?" He placed his keys in the bowl. "Yes." "You had no right to drag her into this." "She was already in it," he said. "You put her there." "So what, you two are conspiring against me now?" He looked at me for a long time, then said quietly, "No, Nerissa. We're just cleaning up after you. He walked to the counter, poured himself water, and opened the drawer where the folders were. I tried to grab one, but he closed it gently and locked it again. Stop treating me like a criminal, I said. He turned to face me. I'm treating you like someone who left a record. The words hit harder than shouting. I wanted to demand what he planned to do, but his calmness made me hesitate. Elliot, I'm still your wife. For now, he said simply. That night, I checked the printer. A faint trace of toner dust covered the tray, and a single blank sheet sat waiting. I lifted it, half expecting words to appear under the light. Nothing, just emptiness. Upstairs, the guest room door was slightly ajar. I saw the faint glow of his laptop and heard the soft click of a USB drive sliding into place. The tiny sound felt louder than thunder. I stepped back before he noticed me, heart pounding. Lying in bed, I tried to convince myself it was nothing. Just organization, just his way of coping. But when I closed my eyes, I saw that word again, evidence, burning behind my eyelids like an afterimage. By morning, I'd rehearsed 6 speeches, each one ending with him forgiving me. But when he came downstairs, dressed neatly, he didn't even glance my way. He poured his coffee, rinsed the spoon, and said only, Ella's staying with my mother this weekend. I blinked. Why? She needs quiet. And I don't. He gave a faint smile. You've had plenty of noise already. Then he left, closing the door softly behind him. I sat alone at the table, staring at the neat line of mugs on the counter. His was clean, mine still half full. 2 separate worlds, one spotless, one stained. I thought about calling Clara again, about begging her to fix what she'd broken, but I knew the truth. She hadn't broken it. She'd just stopped helping me hide it. Somewhere in the quiet hum of the refrigerator, I heard the faint echo of paper sliding into a folder. Or maybe it was just my imagination reminding me what I'd already lost. Saturday came heavy and grey, the kind of day where the light itself seemed to hesitate. The house was too quiet without Ella's chatter. She'd gone with Margaret early that morning. I told myself I needed the silence to think, but the stillness only made me feel like I was waiting for a verdict I couldn't predict. Elliot moved through the house as if I weren't there. He made coffee, folded laundry, checked his phone, every gesture neat, mechanical, impossible to interrupt. I watched him from the kitchen doorway. You could at least look at me, I said. He didn't glance up. I've been looking for years. You just never noticed. The calmness in his voice made my throat tighten. You think you're better than me now because you're pretending to be some saint. He shrugged slightly. No, just quieter. He left the room before I could answer. That evening, he surprised me by asking if I wanted to go to dinner. I didn't understand it. Why now, after everything? I said yes anyway, desperate for something that felt like a chance. I spent an hour getting ready, trying to remember what it felt like to care about how I looked for him. The restaurant was familiar, one we'd visited on anniversaries. I tried to make small talk on the drive there, but he barely responded. When we arrived, he had already reserved a table by the window. I saw 2 other people waiting, Clara and Margaret. My stomach dropped. Elliot pulled out my chair. I thought it was time we all spoke, he said simply. Clara couldn't meet my eyes. Margaret's expression was sharp but controlled. She looked at me with a kind of tired sadness that made me feel 12 years old again. I forced a smile. This feels unnecessary. It's overdue, Elliot said. The waiter came and went, leaving glasses of water we didn't touch. I tried to break the silence. So this is an intervention now? Clara shook her head. It's not about punishment, Neri. It's about clarity. I've had enough clarity for a lifetime, I muttered. Elliot folded his napkin neatly beside his plate. Then this should be easy for you. Margaret spoke for the first time. He's been documenting everything, you know, not because he wants revenge, but because he refuses to live in lies. I laughed, brittle and small. Documenting? What does that even mean? He's not a detective. Elliot's gaze didn't waver. No, just someone who believes in facts. Clara looked down at her lap. He showed me the files, she said quietly. My voice cracked. You went through them. He asked for verification. Verification of what? My worst moments? Your choices, Elliot said. I felt my pulse pounding in my ears. So this is it. You two playing judge and jury while your mother watches. Margaret's tone stayed calm. No, dear, just witnesses. I gripped the edge of the table so hard my knuckles ached. You've all decided I'm guilty before hearing a word from me. Elliot leaned back slightly. You've already said enough. To everyone else. The waiter returned to take our order. I asked for a glass of wine I didn't want, just to have something to hold. No one else ordered. When he left, I said, You're humiliating me again. You could have done this privately. Elliot's voice stayed even. You made it public first. That was different. How? He asked. You turned us into a story before I did anything at all. For a moment, no one spoke. I looked at Clara, searching for a hint of sympathy, but she only looked away. I was trying to help you, she murmured, by betraying me, by stopping you from destroying yourself completely. The wine arrived and my hands trembled as I lifted the glass. So what happens now, Elliot? You gather your evidence, you make your little case, and then what? You post it online. You sue me for existing? He smiled faintly, but there was no warmth in it. No, Nerissa, I don't post. I file. The simplicity of the words made my stomach twist. You wouldn't, I whispered. He didn't answer. He just looked at Clara, then at his mother, and nodded once, as if a silent agreement had been met. I pushed my chair back, unable to sit still. You're unbelievable. You think this makes you noble. You're just cold. A coward hiding behind paperwork. He stood too, calm as ever. Maybe, but at least my cowardice has consequences. I grabbed my coat and left the table, walking out into the night air that bit against my skin. For a few minutes I stood outside, shaking. Through the window, I saw them still sitting there, silhouettes against the warm light, calm and composed, like people discussing logistics. Not the end of a marriage. I wanted to run, to pack Ella's things and leave before he could finish whatever plan he was building. But deep down, I knew it was too late. His quiet had always meant completion. Elliot never started something he didn't intend to finish. When I finally walked back inside, they were waiting. My untouched glass sat where I'd left it. Elliot looked at me, not angry, just final. Tomorrow, he said, you'll have clarity too. Clara whispered, Please don't make it worse. I laughed under my breath. Worse? It's already ruined. Margaret stood then, smoothing her jacket. He gave you every chance, Nerissa, more than most men would. I turned to Elliot. And you gave up on me the second I stopped being perfect. He shook his head. No, I gave up when you stopped being honest. No one said anything after that. The silence at the table stretched, a thin line of restraint holding us all apart. The waiter brought the check, but Elliot had already paid. Of course he had. Everything with him was prearranged, efficient, prepared. On the drive home, I stared out the window, watching streetlights smear into gold streaks on the glass. So, what does tomorrow mean? I asked finally. He kept his eyes on the road. It means I'm done explaining. When we reached the house, he parked the car and turned off the engine. The air between us was heavy but not tense, just final. I'll handle everything properly, he said, voice even, calm, precise. I wanted to ask what properly meant, but something in his tone stopped me. Instead, I followed him inside, the faint smell of toner already drifting from the guest room. He hung his jacket, checked his phone, and locked the drawer where the folders were kept. Upstairs, the light from the hallway cut across the floor in a sharp line, dividing the room in two. I sat on the bed, shoes still on, listening to the faint hum of the printer somewhere behind the wall. He was preparing something that didn't need my permission. When the sound finally stopped, he walked past the bedroom door and said quietly, "Tomorrow, 9 o'clock. You'll want to be ready." Then he turned off the light. The night after the dinner, I didn't sleep. Every sound in the house made me tense. The creak of pipes, the faint shuffle of Elliot moving in the guest room, the printer's soft hum around midnight. I told myself it was just work documents, but the air smelled faintly of ink again, that sharp, sterile scent that now followed him everywhere. When morning came, I felt hollow. Elliot had already left. A note on the counter read, "Ella's staying with my mother through Monday." Nothing else. No greeting, no explanation, no signature. Just that single line written in his neat, steady hand. I stood there staring at it, coffee growing cold in my hand. For a moment, I thought about calling Margaret to demand why she was involved. But I already knew she'd say she was protecting Ella. Protecting her from what, though? From me. The phone buzzed on the counter. Clara. I ignored it. Then a second call. I answered. "What?" Her voice was quiet, almost pleading. "You need to calm down before you make it worse." "I haven't done anything," I snapped. "He's the one who's turned into a robot with a lawyer's brain." "He's documenting, Neri. Not fighting. There's a difference." "You sound like him," I said. She sighed. "Then maybe start listening to both of us." I hung up before she could continue. The house felt foreign. Every item seemed placed with intention, as if Elliot had staged it for a photograph. Mugs aligned, mail sorted, even my jacket folded over the chair instead of thrown. I walked through the rooms, half expecting to find a new camera blinking somewhere. But there was only that same order, the kind that made chaos feel inevitable. By noon, I couldn't stand the silence anymore. I opened my phone and started recording a video. My reflection in the front-facing camera looked pale but composed. "People think they know everything," I began. "They think one mistake defines you, but marriage is complicated, love is complicated." I wanted it to sound strong, brave, defiant. I imagined people watching and nodding, saying I was misunderstood, that everyone makes bad choices when they feel unloved. I ended with a practiced pause. Sometimes the worst thing you can do is trust someone not to break you. I uploaded it to my story before I could think twice. 10 minutes later, Clara called again. "Take it down," she said. "It's my voice, my truth. It's bait. You're handing him proof that you're unstable." "I'm not unstable," I said sharply. "I'm defending myself." "No," she said softly. "You're performing." I almost told her off, but something in her tone made me stop. She sounded sad, not angry. "He's going to move forward soon," she said. "Whatever that means legally, it's coming. Don't make it uglier." "Legally," I echoed. She hesitated. "He met with someone yesterday, downtown." My stomach tightened. "How do you know?" "He asked me for a witness statement." "You gave it?" She didn't answer. The silence told me everything. I threw my phone on the couch and started pacing. For the first time, the calm wasn't empowering. It was terrifying. I'd been so sure I could talk my way through anything, turn guilt into sympathy, but now every word I said just made things worse. That evening, Elliot came home while I was still pacing. He looked tired but steady. "We need to talk," I said. He nodded. "We do." "You're planning something?" "Yes." "Are you really that cruel?" He met my eyes. Cruel would be doing this without warning. "Doing what?" He placed his keys on the counter and said, "Handling it properly." The words landed like ice. "Properly," I repeated. "You said that before. What does it mean this time?" He didn't answer. He just looked at the phone on the couch, still lit from my earlier video. "I saw that," he said. "So what? You're monitoring me now." "I don't need to. You broadcast yourself." I was telling my side. He nodded once. "I know, and it's all saved." I wanted to scream at him, to tear up his neat folders and make him lose control, but he didn't give me the satisfaction. He poured himself water, sat down, and started going through another stack of papers. I tried to peek at the top sheet, but he covered it with his hand. "You're destroying this family," I said. He looked up. "You did that already. I'm just finalizing the details." I walked out, slamming the door hard enough to shake the frame. In the car, I sat gripping the steering wheel, unsure where to go. Clara wouldn't answer my calls now. The bar felt pointless. Even the thought of seeing Tristan or Marco made me sick. I drove aimlessly until the sky went dark, headlights blurring into streaks. When I finally returned home, the lights were off, except for one lamp in the hallway. Elliot was sitting at the dining table again, phone in hand, face lit by the screen's glow. A single folder sat beside him, labeled Personal Property. He looked up as I entered. "We'll talk tomorrow," he said simply. "What's tomorrow?" "Clarity." "You keep saying that like it's a threat." "It's not a threat," he said. "It's structure." I stared at him, realizing suddenly how calm he looked, too calm. "You're actually enjoying this," I said. He set down his phone. "No, I'm finishing it." I went upstairs without another word, the sound of his keyboard following me like footsteps. In bed, I scrolled through the comments on my video. Half were sympathetic, "You're so strong, don't let him silence you," and half were cruel. Someone had already posted a clip from the rooftop night under it. My stomach turned. At 2 a.m., I heard the faint sound of the front door opening. I crept to the top of the stairs and saw Elliot standing there with a brown envelope in his hand. He slid it into his briefcase, zipped it, and placed it by the door. Then he looked up, and for a moment, our eyes met through the shadows. "Go back to bed," he said quietly. "Where are you going?" "Downtown." I didn't ask why. I just watched as he stepped outside and locked the door behind him. The next morning, I woke to sunlight spilling through the curtains and the distant sound of traffic. Elliot wasn't home. On the kitchen counter sat two things: his clean mug and a folded note. Meeting, courthouse, 9:30 a.m. My heart raced. I wanted to believe it was work again, but this time there was no pretending. Something final was in motion. I stared at the note until my vision blurred. The smell of toner still lingered faintly in the air, and I realized with a shiver that everything around me, the order, the calm, the meticulous preparation, had been his way of saying goodbye. I picked up my phone to call him, but stopped halfway. He wouldn't answer. He didn't need to. Whatever he was doing, he'd already decided. And for the first time, I understood that silence wasn't peace. It was a warning disguised as patience. I sat at the table, watching the clock tick toward 9, and waited for the sound of a door closing that would finally make his version of the truth official. He waited for me in the courthouse lobby, calm as ever, holding a folder thick with printed pages. The clerk called my name, and he handed me the envelope without a word. Inside were the divorce papers, custody terms, and financial orders already signed. I looked up, but he was walking away, steady and sure, leaving me standing under the bright, merciless light.